Think about your morning routine. You wake up, walk to the sink, squeeze a dollop of minty, fluoridated paste onto a plastic brush with nylon bristles and scrub away. We take it for granted, but let's travel back in time. Imagine it's the year 1776. You're in colonial America. There are no plastic tubes, no nylon bristles, and honestly, no minty freshness. So what did you do when you woke up with terrible morning breath? How did George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, or a regular blacksmith keep their teeth from rotting right out of their skulls? Today, we are diving deep into the untold, sometimes gross, but utterly fascinating history of dental hygiene in early America. Grab your modern toothbrush and hold it tight, because you're about to appreciate it a whole lot more. Long before European settlers arrived on the shores of North America, the indigenous peoples had their own highly effective ways of maintaining oral health. And frankly, they often had much better teeth than the Europeans who arrived later. Why? Because of the chew stick. A chew stick was exactly what it sounds like. You would take a twig from specific trees, usually hickory, dogwood, oak, or neem if available, and peel back the bark. Then you would chew on one end of the stick until the wood fibers separated and became frayed. Voila, you have a makeshift brush. Trees like hickory and dogwood contain natural tannins, which are antimicrobial. So, while they were physically scrubbing their teeth, they were also chemically fighting bacteria. When European colonists arrived, they quickly adopted this method. If you couldn't afford imported luxuries, your morning routine involved going out to the yard, snapping off a twig, and chewing on it before breakfast. But let's say you didn't want to chew on a tree branch. What was the sophisticated alternative in the late 1700s and early 1800s? The finger and the rag. For the upper and middle classes in early America, the standard practice was to take a small piece of linen cloth or a rag, wrap it tightly around your index finger, wet it, and scrub your teeth and gums. But water alone wasn't enough to get rid of the plaque from a diet heavy in cornmeal and meat. They needed an abrasive. Enter the world of early American tooth powders or dentifrice. If you open a colonial recipe book, you wouldn't find food recipes, you'd find DIY chemistry. To clean their teeth, early Americans would dip their wet rag into crushed charcoal, excellent for absorbing odors, but highly abrasive. Pulverized brick dust, yes, literal bricks, crushed eggshells or oyster shells, common table salt or baking soda. Imagine scrubbing your gums with a rough linen cloth covered in crushed bricks and salt. Ouch. But let's say you didn't want to chew on a tree branch. What was the sophisticated alternative in the late 1700s and early 1800s? The finger and the rag. For the upper and middle classes in early America, the standard practice was to take a small piece of linen cloth or a rag, wrap it tightly around your index finger, wet it, and scrub your teeth and gums. But water alone wasn't enough to get rid of the plaque from a diet heavy in cornmeal and meat. They needed an abrasive. Enter the world of early American tooth powders or dentifrice. If you open a colonial recipe book, you wouldn't find food recipes, you'd find DIY chemistry. To clean their teeth, early Americans would dip their wet rag into crushed charcoal, excellent for absorbing odors, but highly abrasive. Pulverized brick dust, yes, literal bricks, crushed eggshells or oyster shells, common table salt or baking soda. Imagine scrubbing your gums with a rough linen cloth covered in crushed bricks and salt. Ouch. We cannot talk about early American dental health without talking about the father of the country himself, George Washington. We've all heard the legend that he had wooden teeth. It's a great story, but it is 100% false. Washington actually suffered from terrible dental health his entire life, likely aggravated by taking mercury oxide for smallpox. By the time he became president, he had only one natural tooth left. So, what were his dentures actually made of? Human teeth, often purchased from enslaved laborers or grave robbers. Ivory, specifically from hippopotamuses and elephants. Metals, held together by gold rivets and lead springs. Because ivory is porous, it stained terribly from the red wine Washington loved to drink. To the public eye, his stained, dark dentures looked like wood, which is how the myth started. Washington was incredibly self-conscious about this, and he used various powders and scrapers constantly, but without modern preventative care, saving his teeth was a losing battle. So when did America finally become the toothbrush-obsessed nation we know today? It took two major events. First, in 1857, a man named H.N. Wadsworth patented the first toothbrush in the United States, and American factories began mass-producing them. Shortly after, companies like Colgate started selling toothpaste in jars, and later collapsible metal tubes in the 1890s. But the real turning point. World War I. Before the war, the average American soldier had terrible teeth. The US military realized that poor dental hygiene was causing infections and medical discharges. So they made tooth brushing a mandatory daily requirement for every single soldier. They were issued hygiene kits and taught how to brush. When millions of soldiers returned home from Europe after the war, they brought this new habit with them. Suddenly, brushing your teeth wasn't just for the rich or the eccentric. It was a civic duty and a daily American standard. And by 1938, DuPont invented nylon, replacing nasty animal hair with the clean, synthetic bristles we use today. The next time you complain about having to brush your teeth for 2 minutes before bed, just remember the alternative. You could be in a cold log cabin, chewing on a hickory twig, or rubbing your bleeding gums with crushed brick dust and a dirty rag, hoping your teeth don't fall out by the time you're 30. We live in the golden age of dental health. Don't take it for granted. If you enjoyed this deep dive into early American history, hit that like button, subscribe for more historical breakdowns, and let me know in the comments, would you have survived the era of the chew stick? See you next time.